Sean will be running the presentation today, and we're delighted to have him with us. For those of you that don't know, we'll be recording it, as I said, and any sort of questions you've got for Sean afterwards, you can ask him via the chat function at the bottom, or if you want to ask it live, that's absolutely fine. It's quite an interactive session with Sean today, so if you want to ask questions throughout it, I'm sure Sean will be happy to sort of oblige and sort of make it a little bit more interactive. That's absolutely fine. Brilliant. Sean, it's over to you.
Right. Good morning, folks. I can only see one of you at the moment, so if you wanted to put your cameras on, that's fine by me. Hi, James. Right. This is an interactive session. I want questions. So if you've got things that are pertaining to you, particular problems, I say things that you don't understand or even that you don't agree with, please challenge me. I've got no problem with that at all. I haven't got a monopoly on being right. I just am most of the time. Right, let's get going. I'll just share this screen with you. Hold on. Go away. Slideshow from beginning. Right. I work, just let me get my clock going so I don't overrun, because I do have a tendency to talk for England, as those that know me will tell you. So, timer, stopwatch, start. Right. Right. I only use one business book, and it's called The Art of War by a guy called Sun Tzu. It's used now quite vigorously across all aspects in sport, in various other areas as well, but primarily in war, which it was written for originally, and also in business. It was written 2,500 years ago. It's never been out of print. It's been used by some of the best generals in the world. Some of them, unless you're a military historian, you won't have heard of. For example, the most successful general that's ever lived, a guy called Subadai, who was a general of Genghis Khan, and Napoleon, which probably most of you have heard of. But it applies really well to business, particularly with the Chinese and Eastern companies. But Western companies are beginning to take it on more and more now. And to give you an idea, an example of a company that use it and are pretty much pure Sun Tzu, Samsung. And I think they're pretty successful. And what he says is victorious warriors win first and then go to war, whilst defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. Basically, they have a plan before they go to war, and they have planning before they go to war, because planning is far more important than a plan. The second statement that we've got down there, it always comes down to what the client wants and needs, and who will provide it. You should have that tattooed on the inside of your eyelids, because that basically is business in one sentence. If you get that right, you're more than 50% of the way there. Understanding your clients and understanding what they want is the secret to success. So, training a dog. I train dogs to a very high standard as a hobby. My dogs will do what they're told when they're 300 meters away from me. Basically, it's something I really do. And that's my plan when I start to train a dog. I'm going to go along and I'm going to get him to do everything. It's going to go really smoothly and everything else. That's what I actually get. And business is exactly the same. So what you've got to do is to be able to navigate those pitfalls and everything else and all the difficulties that you get there. And that's done through planning. So first question is, what do you want from your business? Where do you want to go? I always liken this to, if I drop you in the middle of Australia and I say, okay, find your way to Margaret River, you're going to ask three things. First of all, where am I? Secondly, where's Margaret River? And thirdly, how the hell do I get there? And that's exactly what it is in business. Where am I now? Where do I want to be? And how am I going to get there? And what am I going to use to get there? So it's very important. So the first thing is, don't wander into decisions or actions. Is it what you want? Is it what you need for your business? And make that numbers. Quite often I say to people, what do they want out of the business? And they'll say, oh, I want to be happy. Well, how do you measure that? What does happiness look like? Does it look like a Ferrari on the drive? Does it look like a mortgage paid? That's the important bit. What do you want from your business and work, right? From that, it's going to be, you know, maybe I only want to work 4 days a week. Maybe I don't want to work 7 days, 12 hours a day, which I get quite often. What do you want to achieve long and short term? So have those things there. What immediate opportunities do you have? Where's the low-hanging fruit? Take that first. What immediate challenges do you have? What's going to stop you getting at that low-hanging fruit? We'll come on to this a little bit later, where we'll go into this in a little bit more depth. And plan for the outcomes that you want. If you have a look at big or any successful business, they plan for the outcomes that they want from the effort that they're putting in. Always, always, always. Why businesses falter and fail? This is very important because that headline one there is really, really important. 80% of new startups fail in the first 60 months. Of the 20% that survive, 80% of them will fail in the first 10 years. So to have a business that's long run and successful is an achievement. Sometimes that's luck, sometimes, mostly it's with good planning. Companies that falter and fail because they run out of cash. Basically, they don't look at what they should be doing. A lot of companies chase turnover. Big mistake. Turnover doesn't mean profit. For example, Carillion, massive turnover in the billions, went bust. Thomas Cook, massive turnover in the billions, went bust. The horse you chase is profit all the time. Turnover really doesn't matter. Not in touch with the marketing customers. What they'll do is they develop the company internally. We'll sell it when we've got it right. We'll sell it when it's right and everything else. Sell what you've got now. Don't wait. If you wait until you've got it perfect, sell what you've got now. If that's what people want and need, sell it now. As you develop it, sell that next bit later and make more money out of it. No real differentiator in the market. Basically, well, we're pricing because everybody else prices it the same. How are you different? What are you bringing to the market that's different? You don't necessarily have to be different. You just have to tell people that you're different. Communication is a big part of this. Failure to communicate the value of your business in a clear and compelling fashion. So if you are different and you don't tell people that you're different, how are they supposed to know? The amount of companies that I come across that are excellent, but really keep it a secret, is unbelievable. It really is. So you need to let the investors and the market know how good you are. Leadership breakdown. The buck stops with you. If you've got a problem in your business, it's because you haven't managed it properly. So, for example, if you're looking at British Leyland in the 1970s, and they were saying everything was blamed on the unions. The unions, they're doing this. The unions are bringing people out on strike and everything else. Who set those people on? And think about it. If you're going to get someone to go on strike, so they're going to go 2 or 3 months with no salary in, how many of you would like to go 2 or 3 months with no money at all coming in? None. You've got to really upset people to get them to that stage where they're going to do that. They don't do it lightly. So if you've got people to that kind of stage, you've managed that incorrectly. It's your fault. And this isn't my thoughts on this matter. This is actually from a guy called Schreiber, who used to run the biggest kitchen company in the country. And I sat in a lecture in the early 80s, and that's what he said. And he was dead right. Inability to nail a profitable business model with proven revenue streams. Basically, people do things and they don't know where the money's coming from. So they'll have 5 products. And you'll say, okay, how much money do you make from each of those products? And they say, well, we don't know. One product might be losing you 30% and the other one making you 60%. You need to know. The most important thing in your business is the numbers. More important than sales, more important than your staff, more important than anything else, it's the numbers. Because if you think about it, if you're not making a profit, what can you do? You can't grow your business. If you want to give your staff better conditions, you can't do that. If you want to have more time off for holidays, you can't do that. You can't do anything unless you're making a profit. Profit is the most important thing in a business, and knowing your numbers and where your profits are coming from is essential, absolutely essential to your business. Why businesses succeed? They plan. It's as simple as that. Think about Ryanair. You buy a bag of crisps on Ryanair, think about how the planning for that has gone ahead. How much effort they've put into getting that bag of crisps on the plane, making sure it's in the right mix, getting it to you, taking the money, right? Transferring the money into the currency that they want it to be in, making sure they've got another bag at the other end to bring back another box of crisps for the return journey. It's massive. And they'll know exactly how much money they're making on every bag of crisps that they sell. So they plan for the profit as well. and they manage the value-added activities. So they make sure that everything that they do is value-added. It brings the profit in. They understand where the profit comes from, what makes more profit than something else. How much is it making? Things that aren't making a profit, they just don't do. Common shared objectives and goals. Everyone knows within your company what you're aiming for and where you're going to. I always recommend, and this particularly with small business owners, sends shivers down the spine, that they let the people know how successful or not the company is. Because if you're not doing that, it's a bit like playing for Man City and you don't know what the score is and where you are in the league. They need to know how well they're doing. You can do that in various ways. Some people just tell them straight out, this is how much we're earning. I've never got an objection with that. Some people do it on percentages, but the more open you are, the better you are. And the more you'll find that your people will bat in that direction. They buy into the why for the company. This is the culture of your company. And this is extremely important because it's what you sell. Apple, for example, if you buy from Apple, you always know that what they're looking at is they're looking to be right at the cutting edge. This is where we're going to be as a company. If you buy from us, it's always going to be the next best thing. It's the next best thing to sliced bread as far as technology is concerned. That's their why, and everybody buys into that within the company. Clear, approachable, and dynamic leadership. You need to be approachable, listen to your people, use them. So if you don't use them, it's a bit like a general being in charge of a battle and not using his regiments. You know, if you don't use your whole army, you're going to lose. Let the world know how good they are. Communication, communication, communication. You'd be surprised how much business you can generate from this. I'll ask a question now. I don't particularly want you to answer this unless you want to. You've got websites. How many of you actually make money out of your website? If you're not making money, why have you got one? You've put an investment into that website. You've put money into it. Why isn't it giving you a return? Websites should give you a return on that investment. If they're not working for you. And why have you spent the money on it? Because most people have a website. It sits on page 56 of the search engine and it's not bringing any cash in. Websites should bring you brass in. You put money into that. No point in having one if it doesn't. They have excellent, please note the word excellent financial management. You really need to have that. We'll come back to that in a minute. And all their objectives are SMART. Now, this is the most powerful business tool you'll ever use. Basically, what it is that you put a task into place, it's specific. We'll come back to the measurable in a minute. So you'll say, okay, we're going to rewrite the front page of our website. Is it achievable? Yes. Is it realistic? Yes. Time bound, we can have it done by the end of the month, right? The measurable should always relate to the bottom line. So that measurable for rewriting the front page of that website is that we will bring in 2 new customers, bringing us X amount of profit each month. And if it isn't doing that, you ask, why isn't it doing that? What can we do to adjust it to make sure that we're bringing that profit in? And you do that with your whole team. And we'll show you how to do this as we go through the presentation. Business plans. First conceived in the late 19th century. Not used until the 1960s, 1970s in the format we know now, and not used well then. Same as the 1930s, doesn't really change much at all. And most people, they'll write a business plan, they spend hours and hours and hours, days doing it. And then they'll go and give it to the business manager or the bank manager. Oh, we've given that to the bank manager. Well, I suggest that you go in a room full of bank managers, which I have done on several occasions, and then say to them, who's read a business plan? Because you'll see no hands in the air. They never read them. They're not interested in them. So why write them? Right? You've got to have plans that are reasonably reviewed and flexible. Give you a quote here from a German Field Marshal, Moltke, right? The elder. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. As soon as you've written a plan, as soon as you put it into action, it's history. And you'll change it. And I defy anyone to show me a plan that was put in place and has lasted more than a week. It alters straight away. Companies that plan succeed. We've talked about Ryanair. We'll talk about other companies a bit later on and how they planned and how they succeeded. Companies that plan succeed. Companies that don't plan, they're warriors going to war without a plan and then seeking to win. This should provide a thought out strategy where you want your business to go to. And that's going to alter. So if you, as I said to you, if you've been dropped into the middle of Australia, you may have a plan to get to Margaret River, but that plan will change because maybe the road's blown out. Maybe your camel's dropped dead and you've got to go on a train or a plane. But whichever vehicle you take, you've always got in mind, I'm going to Margaret River. And that's what you should always have with your business. That's where I'm going. I've got to alter my plan. I've got to alter the route I'm getting there a little bit, but that's where I'm going. Right? They're a little bit, they are like the yellow brick road out of the Wizard of Oz. If you stay on the yellow brick road, you're fine, right? It wanders about a bit, but you're fine. As soon as you go off it, the big horrible monkeys come out to get you. So you should always have that on site and brings you back on track. And you review that every month. You provide the key to victory. I promise this is the last Sun Tzu quote, unless I think one up as I'm going along. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles, right? If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you'll also suffer a defeat. If you know neither yourself nor your enemy, right, you'll succumb in every battle. And that is really true. You need to know who your enemies are myriad, right? So let me ask a question now. I'd like an answer on this one if you can. Are your clients your friend or your enemy? Has anybody got the guts to answer that one?
Going by that quote that you just said, you'd say enemy, because that quote is saying that you need to know them like in specific. So obviously we need to know our clients quite specifically.
Yep, they are your enemy. Your clients want you to provide them with goods and services for nothing or for a penny. They want you to work 14 hours a day for their benefit so you can increase their bottom line. They really don't care. You know, when did you last invite one of your clients to your daughter's wedding, for example, or your wedding? And if you stop dealing with them, will you go out for a pint with them in 2 weeks' time? Now, I'm not saying that they're like, Attila the Hun kind of enemy, but they're certainly not your friend. They are after taking as much out of your company as they possibly can. So you need to remember that. And you don't have to be liked by your clients. Ryanair. Who likes Ryanair? Does anybody like them? Speak up. So why are they the most successful airline in Europe and probably in the world? It's very simple. They provide what the client wants and needs. You don't have to be liked by your client in order to sell to them. It's a lot better if you are. I wouldn't argue that, but you don't have to be. Tools to success. Now, this is a very short list, so I'm going to surprise you here, because I've seen companies turning over £1 billion a year, and I've worked with those companies turning over £1 billion a year. It's where I was trained to do this. I've actually been trained to do this. Most people sort of wander into it. I wasn't. I was trained by some quite high-flying people. I did a course at Cranfield University for 18 months, and I was taught by, all you're too young to remember this guy, by a guy called John Harvey Jones, who was he was the very first dragon on the television. I was taught by his right-hand man as well for 18 months, which was quite an interesting exercise. But SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. We'll go through these in a minute. Features and benefits matrix. That's really important for most businesses. Market attractiveness factors. Which market should you sell to? Critical success factors. What have we got to get right to be successful? And management accounts. The most important thing by far. So SWOT analysis. What this is basically you sit down and you go through this. Now, most people do this in about 20 minutes, 40 minutes at the outside. They pay it lip service, really. It is a really, really important tool because what it does, it tells you exactly where you are. So when I say to you, when you dropped in Margaret River, where am I? This is it. What are your strengths? So, right. Whenever I ask this of a company, I have very, very rarely, 1 in 100 might be able to tell me. But most people go, customer service. And I say to them, okay, prove it. Why is your customer service so good? You tell me why, prove it to me. Well, we've got references on things. That doesn't mean you could have written them yourself, right? You need to be able to put some numbers behind these claims. And if you don't know the strengths of your company, how the hell can you sell it? You need to know what your strengths are. On the other hand, when I ask them about the weaknesses, they give me pages of what's wrong there. Oh, we know what's wrong. We know why this isn't working and everything else. They give me pages of that. That's actually very good, because if you've got loads of weaknesses, those weaknesses can be turned into strengths. If you've got no weaknesses and you still aren't making money, for example, then I would strongly consider shutting your company. Opportunities. Which are your opportunities? Which are the best ones? And that not necessarily in markets. Your opportunity, for example, might be to have better financial management. It may be to utilize your staff better, or to have a better mix of staff. So your opportunities can be a number of things. And threats, what and who can spoil the dream? So for example, it could be COVID for restaurants. I've had 1 or 2 restaurants on my books this last 18 months, or it could be legislation. You know, for example, my wife has spent the last 2 days taking exams because she's a solicitor. And it amazes me the amount of money she spent 15 hours on it one day. So that's the sort of thing that can threaten the dream. Features and benefits. Now, this is really important, because what this is what you're going to sell, right? I'm going to give you one tip on selling. If you're selling to managing directors, or in your case, James, for example, headmasters might be one of your clients, right? What's the only thing they're interested in? The one and only thing. Anybody? No?
What they're getting on return.
That's it. They're only interested in how's this going to affect my bottom line. If you're seen as a cost with no benefit, it becomes far more difficult to get them to buy. Selling is a different thing. Getting them to buy is another thing. I'm not a sales coach. I would never term myself as that. What I do is I term strategy. What you do when you're in front of the client, I can give you things to do on that, but it's basic. There are people who are far better at that than I am, right? But what you look at is, so you say you look at the features. So what features is, so let's take a bike, right? This bike, we're going to put pedals on it, because the first bikes didn't have pedals on. What are the advantages of that? Well, the bike goes faster, it can go further. You can put somebody younger on the bike. What are the benefits? Well, it can go faster, so we can make twice as many deliveries, so we can drop 5% off the delivery price for the client. We're making 10% more, but we can drop 5% off of that. It can carry more, so we can make bigger deliveries for you, Mr. Client, right? We can employ somebody who's younger, so we don't have to pay him as much. So that's a number for us. And those are the benefits. And those benefits are what the client will buy, and always make them numbers, and always make them wherever you can so they pertain to the client's bottom line. We are going to make you richer for doing this. In the case of headmasters, for example, James, that'll be, well, you're going to get more points on your titles. You know, you're going to get more people who are going to be looking at, who are going to pass their exams or be more settled. You know, you're going to get a better result for your school on the Ofsted markings and things like that, because that's their currency. But you put it into the currency that they want to have in there, right? That is actually quite difficult to do. Usually that takes me about 4 hours to complete with the company. But believe you me, once it's done, I'll give you one example. We did it with a bookkeeper. Everybody terms bookkeepers as being, and this is recently, over the last 3 months, terms bookkeepers as being a cost of their business that they can do without. That bookkeeper is now, when she was getting 2 new clients a month, she now, last month she got 10 at twice the rate she was charging before. And they're not small companies neither. One of them's got 200 employees that she's doing the payroll for. So that gives you some example of what you can achieve if you've got this in place. Market attractiveness factors. Now then, how would you pick a market? So, you know, basically, you're out there, you're going to be looking, how are you going to pick a market?
Where you've got your biggest strengths, where that marries to, you know, your experience and skills?
No. What you do is you have a look at the people you can sell to. That's your top line up here. I'm pointing at the screen here like an idiot. This top line here, those are the ones you can sell to. Now they'll be bigger than this. You have about 8 there. Then what you do, and you really need to have this facilitated. It's a bit like tennis. It's easy in principle, but it's very difficult when you come to do it. Then what you do, you put down there what you want from the market, not what they want from you, what you want from them, right? So you might want them to have the ability to purchase. You certainly want profits. So, you know, I'm going to make more money out of them. How easy is it to sell to the market, for example? You know, how much influence do they have on purchasing? So we put this here. And then you go down there with your whole team, right? With your team, and you market. Right. Can architects buy from us? No, they can't. Right. So, okay, we'll give them a 4. Can local authorities buy from us? Yes, they can. They've got money. They can buy from us. Ooh, right. Okay, then we'll give them a 7 then. Right. And then you go all the way across and you add them up, and that gives you most attractive market. These are the markets that you're going to sell to. So you've got 3 there. Generally speaking, I keep it to 2, but we wouldn't argue because local authorities and housing associations are so closely attached, as you could call them 1. And those are the most markets that you find most attractive because they're going to give you the most. Don't think about what you can give them. You think about what they're going to get you, because remember, they're not your friends. You want to screw them like they want to screw you, basically. I mean, that's putting it very crudely and probably isn't the right language to use in terms of, how can I put it, you know, how you should be approaching this. But I want to emphasize to you that, you know, because we've got a very short space of time here of how to approach this. And don't think, you know, you haven't got to go out there with murder on your mind. It's just you want to make sure you maximize your returns off them. So that's what you do, and that's how you pick a market. Then what you do is you ask yourself, what have I got to do to be successful in that market? These are your critical success factors. So you could say, right, well, they've got to know about me. So we've got a market awareness in there, market perception of products, pricing perception, all of these things. And you can have a list of about 8. This is what you've got to get right. So you might have to adjust your product. We get a better product, right? I've done that in the past. You might say, well, we've got to get deliveries better, right? Because we've got to, you know, got to make sure that we've got to get out there. So you might have to make some adjustments to that. I've done that in the past. And then you mark yourself on how well you're doing there. And be honest. Low marks are good. Low marks mean you can improve. If you're failing in a market and you get 9 in all of them, pack up shop because you're not going to do any better. So be critical of yourself. And then what you do, that's where you bring in your SMART objectives. So you'll say market awareness. You give it your team, then you pick out, say, your accountant, your marketing guy, and your production guy, and maybe your sales guy. And you'll say, okay, I want you to go away and I want you to build me a plan of how we're going to improve our market awareness using SMART objectives. Specific, small steps means small mistakes, right? We want the measurables pertaining to the bottom line. It's achievable, realistic, and we want to know when you're going to have it done for. Right? Go away, do that. I'm not going to interfere with you as a managing director. I'm going to sit up a corner and be quiet. Very important that you do that as a managing director because the clue's in the name. You manage the direction. I'd never see Richard Branson flying a plane or, you know, changing the tire on one. He doesn't get involved in that. He manages the direction that the company's going in. And that's what he should do. And what he does, he waits for people to come with policy to him, and he will pick the policies that he wants to take forward. And that's what you do as a managing director. So they'll do all that and they'll bring that into play. And every month you sit down with them and you discuss that with them. And we'll come back to that in a minute. All right. So what that means is that you may be taking small steps. Every step and every action that you're doing in your company is pertaining to your bottom line, right? They've picked the market. Your staff have helped to pick the market. Your staff have helped to put a plan in place to be successful in those markets. Because you've told them where you're at with everything, right? They are knowing where they stand at the moment and where they're going to because you've told them where your Margaret River is. And then what you do is you sit back and watch because believe you me, you want to motivate your staff. And no better way of doing this than this. Your problem won't be getting them motivated. If you really use this properly and let them do the jobs, right, your problem will be keeping them in the box because they'll be hammering your door down with ideas of how to improve things. Look at me, what I'm doing here. You will have failures. Some people won't do it. They'll leave. But the people that want to be involved and want to take the business forward, and that's most people, once you say to them, this is your baby, you go away and do it, you'll be surprised how they'll react. Really massively well. So it gives a culture, this does, and obviously there's more to this and that I can fit in just an hour, but it gives you a culture of taking the business forward. I know it's unusual. I know other people don't use this kind of methodology, but believe you me, it works. On 2 separate occasions in very well-defined markets, we've taken 85% market share on this worldwide. Right? And the reason that the reason we didn't take the other 15% is because we didn't want them. They couldn't pay us. So we left that with the opposition. You have the problem, children. We'll just have the cream that we can maximize profits on. And both times that was done at better prices than the opposition, because you don't strike where the opposition is strong, you strike where they're weak. And we'll come to that now, because the next thing that you do is you take a competitor, preferably somebody who's about 10 times bigger than you if you're a small company. Have a look at them and then mark them on the same aspects. So if you take their critical success factors and mark them, how well are they doing? If they're bigger than you, their numbers will be bigger than yours, right? But I will give you a cast iron guarantee here. Cast iron. If you're telling yourself, being honest with yourself, and your team are being honest with yourself, you get your numbers bigger than their numbers, you will take market share and you will take it profitably. It works every single time. Never, ever fails. But you've got to be honest. I have seen it fail, but then you'll say to someone like, well, how are you doing on market awareness? Oh, we're a 9 on that. And then you'll go down the road and ask somebody who's like, within 3 miles of them, have you heard of this company? They'll say, no. Well, obviously they're fooling themselves there then. You've got to be honest. And again, this gives your your staff, your team, your regiments something to go for. And believe you me, they will go for it. So it's a great way of building that team ethic. Team ethic isn't built by I remember once going on a team building exercise where it was run by the SAS. I mean, I want a team building exercise. That was just get dirty exercise. Another one where we were banging drums. I mean, what the hell that had got to building teams? I've got no idea. And now we're banging a drum. Everybody went away and just started doing the same thing again. You've got to change the culture within the business. And that's not done unless you change the systems within the business and the thinking within the business. So, budgets. If you're running a business doing more than £100,000 a year, you need a budget. And all that is a stake in the ground. People get very, very worked up about them. Oh, I can't do a budget. It's basically, what am I going to spend? When am I going to spend it? Where am I going to spend it? And how much am I going to have coming in? And if you find that that budget is wrong, change it. You're in charge, not the budget. So if you put a 12-month budget in and 3 months down the road, you find out it's wrong, change it. It's just a stake in the ground. It's a measuring stick. That's all it is. It's a ruler. But they are important because they set everything else against that. Because when we come to the next bit, which is your management accounts, that's where it becomes important. Because what you've done here, for example, is you've got your budget here. That budget that's what we've planned to do. So we have planned, for example, to have salaries at 10% of our turnover, which is up there, our sales, right? That's what you're actually doing. So sales, it's down, but our salaries are 10% of the turnover. That's great. It's not a problem, right? If it starts to become 12 and 15% of your turnover, you've got an issue there. You need to manage it. All right. So raw materials, so purchases there, right? That is 60% of your turnover. If that suddenly becomes 70%, you've got an issue there. You need to manage it. Why is that more? I have had 4 instances this year of people having serious amounts of money stolen off them, well, over the last couple of years. And when we're talking serious amounts, I mean as much as £200,000. Right? Why has that happened? Because nobody looked at this. If you, for example, know that you're going to be spending 10% of your turnover on your purchases, and it suddenly shoots up to 70 or 80%, you know there's something wrong there. You start to look at it. If you know your salary suddenly shoot up to 12 and 14%, and it stays there, you know you've got an issue there. You start to delve into it. It prevents that happening. And it's that simple. Now, people say to me, we'd have never caught them. Believe you me, I would. Because when I was running big businesses, like turning over 50 million a year, you asked me on the first of the month what we were going to make profits at the end of the month, and I knew these figures that well, I'd tell you. And I'd be right within a few £100. That's how much you need to know these numbers. And what's more, if you've got 5 large companies, you need to know what each one of them companies are making. How much profit are we earning off that? What's each company bringing in for us in terms of profit? right? Because if they're not bringing the right numbers in, then you need to do something about it. So that's the level that you have to go to. We've got 5 or 6 products, right? Which ones are bringing us the money in? Why isn't that one bringing us money in? And this happens in big companies as well. I've worked in big, I remember the very first job I was given after I'd done my training, they said, Lytag it was, which is from Rugeley Power Station. It's pulverized fuel ash. They said, we don't seem to be making any money on this. Can you go and investigate it? It took me 20 minutes. I went out to look at the price we were paying for it, £5 a ton, and then found out we were selling it for £4 a ton. Didn't take a genius to work that one out. We just stopped doing it, you know, and immediately I put money on the bottom line. So it's a matter of knowing your numbers all the time. This is the most important sheet, and you should have one of them every month. That gives you what's happening for the year. This is what gives you what's happening now. Go through this with any one of you at some later date. Getting paid. I go to a lot of companies and they don't get paid. Oh, I don't do that. Or if I ask him for the money, essential to get paid on time and in full. If you go to a pub and you give them, you say, can you give me a pint, please? I'll pay you next week. They're going to say no. Right? It's absolutely essential. If you have a £10,000 bad debt and you're making 10% profit, you've got to get £100,000 worth of new business in to cover that debt. So make sure you get paid. Rule 1 is don't get in that situation in the first place. Do you check your clients to make sure they can pay? I bet most of you don't. In fact, I bet all of you don't, actually. I've just got a golden rule. If they haven't got what I call a green light, Experian, they work on a traffic light system, or used to, I don't know whether they still do. If they don't give me a green light on the credit control, you don't get credit. Now ask me how much business I've lost by taking that view. None. And I've done it with big companies. Carillion, for example. Went to Carillion, they said, well, you've got to give us credit. So I'm not giving you credit. You're like, you know, you're in a red area, you're not getting credit of us. All I did was avoid a big debt, and they still ordered off me because I'd got what the client wants and needs. So never, ever get into that situation in the first place. Use a credit check service. Use the stop supply clause, right? You're not paid as well, you're not getting any more. Well, we've got to have it. This job won't stop. It'll stop if you don't give it. It's not my problem, mate. It's yours. You should have paid me. You haven't. You'd be surprised how quickly they'll pay you. And then they'll say, well, we'll never deal with you again. And I'd say, well, there's a bonus. Get on the phone on the 2nd of the month, chase your money. Some companies won't pay you unless you chase them. Don't be worried about upsetting the client. You've got a contract. You're supplied in full, right? Part of their contract to supply in full, right? And what they'll do, they'll emotionally bully you. Well, we won't deal with you again. You know, our managing director says we haven't got to pay you. You haven't dotted this I or crossed this T. Don't be having it. You know, simple as that. Go to the client's premises and ask for the cash. Now, I'm 6'5" and 15.5 stone. Sonia's seen me, I'm big. So for me, that's a bit easier. For some of you, it isn't, but you'd be surprised. They pay, if they're in trouble, they pay the person who hassles them the most. So if you hassle them the most, they'll pay you just to get them out of your hair. If you ignore them, they won't pay you. Be polite and firm, you know, don't get aggressive. Just be very calm, keep your voice loud. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a winding up order on you if you don't pay me. Oh, well, you'll have to do it. Okay, then I'm going to wait to do it now, and then do it, right? Because other people will hear and they won't mess you about. We better pay him. He's a bit vicious. Don't be frightened of being vicious. They're being vicious. They're trying to send you a bust. They're not your friends. Consider stage payments. You know, I'll give you one, but you got to pay me for two. Right, I've done a lot of that over the years. Always payment up front, right? They'll say, well, we'll pay you at the end of the month. No, you won't. You'll pay me now. And I want the money before you get the goods. Use debt collection agencies. I've got a great one if anybody needs it. He's really, really good. He's got me some serious, we've had some fun over it in the past as well. But make sure he doesn't become your best buddy. Right. Technology adoption curve. I don't know whether any of you have seen this, but it's very important. 2.5% of the population are innovators. They invent things. 13.5% are what you call early adopters. They buy it as soon as they see it. So they queue up for the new Apple iPhones or Tesla cars and things like that. God knows what they queue up for a Tesla for. But there we go. You've got your early majority and late majority, so they're more comfortable when they've seen it around. And then you've got your laggards, and they still want to use TomToms. They're not going to use mobile phones, for example, ever. They're real laggards. They're not interested in the technology at all. And on these, with every product you buy, you will be at a different stage. So, for example, with me, if it's dogs, I'm right up here. I can find me thing. There we are. I'm right up here. If you're looking at I don't know, mobile phones, I'm somewhere over here because I don't care about them. Right? But the interesting thing is, and this is where it's very important, particularly for small businesses, these guys will see when they bought once, when they've seen you once. The early majority, they need to see you 9 times, that middle line. But if you're going over here, they need to see you 29 times. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is when you are on the internet now, and there's a very good example of this actually. There's a monocular that I keep seeing, and it keeps getting flogged at me. And because I use these things quite a lot, I think, ooh, that's just cheap and nasty and everything else. But as they've kept hammering away at me, and I must have seen this 100 times now, I'm beginning to think, that's worth a pump for 40 quid, that is. And I understand what's going on. It's psychological, that the more I see it, the more comfortable I feel about buying that. So if you're not advertising and you're not telling people what you're doing and you're not using your website properly and things like that, social media, right? You're selling to these boys over here, the early adopters, these back characters. So you're actually only selling to probably 16% of the population. What you want is all these boys as well, this other 68%. So your market awareness is really important to get your business out there. And remember, you're selling your benefits. So your features and benefits coupled with this is what you need to put together. Pricing. Profit is not a dirty word. The amount of companies I go to, and they'll say to me, pricing, well, pricing. Well, he charges this, so I charge that. I'll say, why? Well, it's what we think we can, it's what everybody else is charging. So why are you charging that? I'm not interested in that. I'm asking you why you're charging it. They've got no idea other than that. And then I'll say to them, well, what are your costs? For example, with a cafe I'm working with, plate of bacon and eggs. How much does it cost you to put that in front of me? I haven't got a clue. Well, how can you price it? So you need to understand all of these things, but profit is not a dirty word. Reassuringly expensive. I work on occasion with some quite big companies, and Siemens is one. Siemens are a consultancy company, as are Pricewaterhouse and KPMG now. But and I sat down with the guy from Siemens, and he was charging, wait for this, £10,000 a day. And I said, crikey, that's expensive, Victor. And he said, sure, we like to be reassuringly expensive. And you'll be surprised. If you price low, you're providing a Rolls-Royce service priced at and you price it low, people will view you as selling a go-kart. I've got clients where all I've done with them is put the prices up. One lady in particular was charging 250 quid a day. Right? She's now charging £1,600 a day, right? And she's got that much work on, she can't cope with it. But when she was on 250 quid a day for exactly the same product, she couldn't sell it. It's perception. Don't be frightened of charging what you're worth. What does your comparable competition charge? Note the word comparable, very important. What USPs do you have you can charge for? They need to be in your features and benefits. What am I bringing to the game? How am I going to improve your bottom line? This is how I'm going to do it. Price in your bracket. If you're a Dacia, price is a Dacia. We're cheap and cheerful. Say we're cheap and cheerful. We ain't a Rolls Royce, but what you're going to get is value for money. It'll affect your bottom line in this way. Charge what you can get away with, right? I'll give another example. We had a guy who was, I won't say what he was doing, but he was merrily working away and everything else. I doubled his profits overnight. You know what I did? Put 10% on his prices. Nobody noticed. They didn't even notice his price had gone up. They carried on buying. Why? Because his benefits that he was bringing were so great that he could afford that 10%, and he doubled his profits overnight. Break even. What have you got to sell to break even? You need to know that. Turnover vanity, profit sanity. Turnover doesn't matter. The only reason for turnover is so you can go to your mates and say, my business turns over 20 million a year. Well, you know, Thomas Cook turned over a few billion a year, but it didn't make any difference. He still went bust because they took what they were looking at was turnover and never profit. Profit is what matters. What they should have done is halved the size of the business, kept the profitable bits, and they'd have still been around now. Don't try and justify the price. If you're driving up in your Rolls Royce and everybody says, look at you, you're doing well, say, yeah, I'm good. Just as simple as that. I know what I'm doing. I run a very successful business. I know what I'm doing. You're getting what you want. I'm fulfilling your wants and needs. And if I am doing that, you've got to pay the price for it. And that's why I've got this, because I know what I'm doing and I'm value for money for you. Don't try and justify it. Profit is not a dirty word. So many people think it is. How can I make more money? Charge what you're worth. Right. We'll go through this very quickly. This is an actual situation, right? We were selling 6,000 widgets. Find this down the screen. 6,000 widgets, £110 each, turnover 660,000, purchase costs, gross margin, and then those are the costs of administration and everything else, which gave £66,000, 10% profit. My boss said, what I want you to do is reduce the price, right? Big no-no. How many people here give a discount for bigger business and everything? Oh, you give us a big order, we'll knock 10% off that price for you. Don't know what the numbers are. You're actually doing it for nothing most of the time. Right. So we increased the price decreased the price by 15%. I said, what will that do? He said, put 33% on your sales. I said, I doubt it, but we'll put it in. So we did 8,000, right? 15% reduction on the price, whapped the turnover up, went shooting up, right? I said to him, okay, there's what the purchase costs are, right? And we'll leave the costs where they are. We're selling 33% more, but it's going to go up, but we'll leave them where they are. Decrease in profits of 48%. Don't discount. Option 2. So he said to me, well, what would you do? I said, well, we can sell 10% more. We should manage that on 6,000 units, right? So, okay, so we're selling them blah, 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 and we put the costs up. I said, we'll put the costs up because we're selling 10% more, so we'll put them up. All right, so an increase of £25,000, right? Increase in profits of 7.5%. Said, well, what else can you do? So we can put the price up. So we'll put it up moderately, just by 3%. Said, okay, then. So we put it up by 3%, but you'll lose business. You'll lose at least 5% of your business. Okay. So we put that in, right? So there we are. Blah, blah, blah. I said, but we'll leave the costs where they were originally. They'll go down, but we'll leave them where they were. Increase in profits of 5.5%. Now, what did I do? I'll tell you what I did. I did both. And the reason I did, because I understood my numbers. He didn't. He was a managing director and didn't understand his own numbers, but I understood them. So I did both. I put the price, so 10% more, put the price up, nobody noticed. And we put 40% on the bottom line. And we did that 3 years on the trot. Small moves make big differences if you understand the numbers. Right, speed and indirect attacks. A direct approach is where you go to the market with an existing product and you fight on price. So Barnes & Noble, Amazon and Kindle, right? All that happens is that you get a bum fight and prices spiral down, and it's the world's worst way of doing it. Siege warfare, it's always expensive, it'll damage both companies. So you avoid that. Never fight on price. An indirect approach is when a company looks for a weakness in the competition's offer and then exploits that weakness. So you go to your critical success factors, look where your competition is weak and attack them there. Now, who's heard of White Castle? In the 1950s, White Castle were the biggest burger pushers in the States by a country mile. McDonald's had got 2 shops. They got shops in every town in the country. They're still about now. McDonald's came along, had a look at what the client wanted and needed, provided it, and who's heard of White Castle now? You've all heard of McDonald's. They attacked where they were weak, because White Castle just did your burger, slapped it on the couch and away you went. And McDonald's realized that what the client wanted was a family experience. a couple of toys for the kids and everything else. They charge more than White Castle, but their restaurants were always full. You had to queue up to get into them. So they expanded with the same benefit, attacking where White Castle were weak. And they beat them. We'll come back to Samsung and the iPhone in a minute. This approach always wins. It can be a bit more complicated, but I don't want to go into that now. I haven't got the time for it. Right? It always comes down to what the client wants and needs, and is that being provided? Always look at what your client wants and needs. Right, Samsung versus the iPhone. Samsung decided they wanted some of the smartphone markets, and Apple were the big holders of this. So what they went out to, the first thing they did is they did a huge survey, and they asked all of the clients worldwide, what do you want? And they came back with the answer, and they put this into plan. Keep your plans as dark as the night, then fall like a thunderbolt. They put all of the plans in. They produced the phone, they produced the manuals, they produced the instructions, they trained the staff, they produced the packaging and marketing. They did everything, and they kept it a secret. Apple knew something was going on, but they thought they're just going to come in and challenge us on price, and we'll beat them because we're the technology people. We're great at technology, right? Got arrogant, didn't look at the competition. They came in within 4 weeks of the launch, and then they launched the phone, told everybody what they're going to do. You know what they did? They produced a phone with a bigger screen. That was it. Nothing more, nothing less, just a phone with a bigger screen. They took 25% of Apple's existing market overnight. Straight into profit. Right? The next thing they did is they went to Africa and Asia, and they said to them, what do you want? And they said, we can't afford iPhones. What we want is something like that, you know, cheap. We don't care if it isn't as good, as long as it does the basics. So they produced that. You won't see an iPhone in Africa or Asia now, right? They took another 25% of the available market that iPhone were ignoring. So they got 50% of the market within 4 weeks, straight into profit. They didn't have to wait. Within 4 weeks, they were making money. What does the client want and need? And then exploit the competitor's weakness. That's what they did. They achieved indirect attacks. They didn't attack them on price. They attacked them, or profit, shall I say. They attacked where they were weak, where they hadn't asked the client what they wanted and needed. They assumed they knew. We're the technology people. We know better than the client. You've seen that now in politics, actually. If you have a look at the Tories and Labour, regardless of which party you attain to, Labour are not giving the clients what they want and need. So that's why they're not succeeding. Essential actions. So what have you got to do to be successful? Review your maths and SWOT every 4 months with your team. Are we in the right markets? Markets change really rapidly now. You need to do that every 4 months because the situation changes. When business plans were first put in, you could buy, if you were buying a product from India, it took you 6 months to get it. Now you get it in 6 seconds. So you need to move that quickly. Review your CSFs and SMART objectives every month. Sit down with your team, go through your SMART objectives. Is it successful? Can we move forward? Review your management accounts every week, month, and year, including money owed. Are we doing all right this week? Yeah, we are. Are we doing all right this month? How's it going for the year? What can we do to improve it? What's that bottom line? Know what your bottom line is. I was talking to a new client this morning before I came in here. No idea what money they're making from month to month, week to week. They have to wait till the end of the year. So they might be losing £10,000 a week and they don't know. And this is not a small company. I mean, we're talking about companies that are turning over 2, 3, 4 million a year and they don't know. Review your KPI activity every month, which is basically that top bit. And engender a one business, one team ethic. So make sure that you've got that one team ethic going out there and you're including all your people. You're using everybody to the fullest of their abilities. I can give you a lot of examples of how this works, right? I haven't got time for it now. And that's it. Any questions? Please ask me some questions.
Thanks for that, Sean. Anybody got any questions for Sean? Very, very useful presentation. I imagine you could go on for quite a lot more in depth of sort of some of the areas that you covered there, Sean. So it's great to see that your emails at the end, because obviously if they want to ask some more questions or they've got some more and they I can't think of anything at the moment. There might be questions that they can ask sort of later on to you.
Yeah. If you want an hour with me privately, I'm quite happy to do that. You know, there are not 30 of you, which is a big bonus. But anyone who wants to spend an hour with me after, because this is actually, I do full day seminars on this, where we're looking at it. Even then, you can't cover everything. It's not. To make a difference can actually be quite quick. I mean, you know. Generally speaking, people start to make more money after the first meeting, and I have made big differences to companies in 12 hours or less. Usually it takes a lot longer than that.
Well,
I've got a quick question.
Go on.
What's the most, I would say, unusual but business that you've worked with? Like, what sort of businesses? Is there anything that's been quite out there, a bit wacky, a bit creative, maybe?
I'll tell you what the most difficult companies to work are is accountants and solicitors, because let me show you this, right? Let me just, right, stop share, screen share, whiteboard. And I am working with people now. I've got an online fashion, which for me is quite out there and wacky, because as you know me, Sonia, you know I am no fashionista, but I'm working with a fashion company at the moment. That's really interesting. She's actually teaching me stuff. And I often say to my clients, she's a trainee millionaire. She's a trainee billionaire. And then another one I'm working with is actually selling wigs. And I believe you me, you've got no idea how big the wig market is. But this is an interesting graph, right? That's growth. That's time. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is because when you're starting a business, that's what you want. You're looking for that sort of growth. And then when you start, lost my bloody cursor again. Where's that? I know it's there, right? What happens is that you'll go like that, because turning £1 into £2 easy, but turning 200 into 400 is harder, 2,000 into 4,000 harder, 200,000 into 400,000, you're starting to get really difficult, right? So you go like that. Then what companies start to do is this. How many of you recognize this? Oh, good year, bad year, good year, bad year, 2 good years, 1 bad year, good year, bad year, and you're sort of wandering across like that, right? Now, what happens is you get to a point and something happens. So for the restaurant industry, for example, it was COVID, and then that happens, right? For the building industry in 2006, 2007, it was the house prices getting stupid and the mortgage things. I mean, I pulled out. I was actually building houses in 2005, 2006, and we did the market attractiveness and we pulled out because when we had a look at it, it was ridiculous. And if you have a look at some of the formulas that we're using for mortgages, I mean, I've got an A in degree level statistics and I didn't understand it, right? And now that my brother, who's also got an A in A level statistics, we didn't understand what they were doing. But the interesting thing is that companies that have been doing that for a long time, the further they go along that route there, the more difficult they find it to change. They get really, really wrapped up in it. And a perfect example is Thomas Cook, because their basic way of selling holidays have been the same since 1840s when Thomas Cook first did it. They produced a brochure, they put it in the shops, people bought it to where you went, right? And when the internet came in, they had been doing it for that long, they couldn't adjust and they went bust. Another one was Austin Reed, who I used to buy all my clothes off. They were based in Crewe. You youngsters won't remember these, but they were really top-end clothes, fabulous clothes. And they went bust because they kept trying to sell through shops and didn't alter their method of selling. And they found it impossible to do because they couldn't take the change that was going on there. So it's a really big thing. And where you should try and put in your interventions, if you can, is over here. And people say, well, do I need a business coach? Or Ryanair use them. Price Waterhouse, their main business is the biggest accountants in the world, and KPMG, and Siemens, they're all consultants now. So they use them. All the councils use them. Bentley use them. Rolls-Royce use them. The big quarrying companies use them. Everybody uses business coaches, the big companies, because you need them to come in and you need them for short, sharp hits. Business coaches, they'll say to you, right, well, we'll have a contract for the next 3 years. Run like, put your Usain Bolt shoes on and run. What you want is somebody to come in, put a particular problem right, get you on the right track, go away. And then when you need him, you call him in again. But all successful businesses use coaching or advisors, which I prefer to use. I don't like coach. It's not the right word, but they all use them. And if you think about it, football clubs do the same. They bring in people, they'll use them, then they'll move them on. Rarely will you get an Alex Ferguson. But let me ask you a question, James, right? Who's the best football manager? And I know nothing about football, right? Who's the best football manager that's ever lived?
Best football manager ever lived. Oh, there's a few ways you can go about that. You can go like most successful or like personal opinion.
Well, you tell me who you think it is.
Well, if I go personal opinion from what I've seen, it's probably got to be Pep Guardiola at Manchester City.
Totally disagree with you.
Okay.
What happened with Pep Guardiola's Barcelona when he left?
Went downhill.
Right. So why is he the best then? Shall I tell you who's the best? Bill Shankly.
Yeah, I know where you're going with this one. Yeah, because he's left last.
When Bill Shankly went, it carried on for decades because he put a system in and a plan in place and planning in place, and it just kept going. It's even now he's got an influence over what's going on. And when did he retire? In the 1960s.
Oh, yeah.
The others are flash in the pans.
Yeah.
They're great while they're there, but Shankly by far and away was the best.
There's a book I'm reading at the moment that's on about quite a lot of this stuff you're on about. So on about stress, it's called From Good to Great, and it's got sort of all this sort of stuff in about how building a culture, getting people on board, and how a lot of the, like you were saying there, the CEOs of big companies and successful ones are ones that when they left, it was fine, but then when the other ones, when they were in there, it was all about their ego and their pleasing their ego.
Yeah, it is, and it's why it's successful, because you've got to have the right mix that gets in there and everything, and and quite often you get where the managing director won't let them do what they need to do, and I think that, for example, Mourinho suffers from that quite a lot. I mean, I think that when he was at Tottenham, he wasn't really allowed to do what he wanted to do. And when he was at Man United, I mean, I heard something on the radio this morning, said when he was there, first year they let him spend some money, second year he bought lousy players because they wouldn't give him the cash. And he couldn't operate on that footing. He couldn't win. Now, again, he's a good manager, but he's a flash in the pan because as soon as he leaves, everything goes to pants again. Yeah. Whereas with Shankly was there and it just kept going. And the culture and everything that he built within that football club remained with it after he'd gone, after he was dead, after Bob Paisley was dead, Yeah. So that's why he was the best, in my opinion.
Okay. I've got a question then. So what we're on about, obviously, I'm nowhere near the stages of these big figures. I'm quite early on. Would you start like implementing it straight away at this stage?
Yes.
So then it just continues.
Yeah, it works. It works for my clients. Range from my biggest one turns over 200 million. My smallest one turns over about 20,000. Right. You might say, why does a £20,000 business want me? Because they want to be a 200,000, £2 million pound business. You start it right away, because this works for a corner shop as well as it does for a big corporation. The place where I saw it operated the first time and where we worked, we turned over just short of £1 billion in the UK. And basically everything you've seen there, we did within that business. And it worked an absolute treat. We made a mint, an absolute fortune. And we took on two occasions in that particular, because we were in specialized products, so we could measure the markets. And 2 occasions we took 85% market share, and we did that at much higher prices than the competition were charging, because we understood what the client wanted and needed. Now that was a technical thing, to be honest with you, because my background is in silicas and glass and ceramics, so it's highly technical. And what we did, we adjusted products and adjusted yields from those products and production rates from those products. We did all that so that when they put them into place, and what we emphasized is, right, you've got that in there for an hour. How many good pieces are you getting out at the end? Well, we're getting 100. How many are you getting out the competition? 50. Well, we're charging you 10% more for that, right? But look at what you're getting at the other end. Yet we'll have it.
Yeah.
It's always down to the numbers, always. So it wasn't just saying, well, it's better. We had to prove that it was better. So when someone says to me, I've got great customer service, I'll say to them, prove it. And they never can. for example, if you, and I don't know whether we've got any website designers here, but if you've got a website, right, you go to a website designer, they'll say to you, right, I'll give you a website. I'll have all the dancing ladies across the screen. And I'm being unfair here, right? But I'll pick on these because it's one that everybody has. All the dancing ladies on the screen, we give you everything else and all that. Question I ask is, right, we're going to give you £10,000 to do this website. I know that's a ridiculous number. Yeah. What return on investment can I expect? How much more business are you going to bring in for me? Oh, I don't know that. Well, why should I give you the money then?
Yeah.
It's a perfectly reasonable question. I'm not asking you to give me a guarantee. I'm asking you to give me what you've done with other people and how you've improved their profits. And if you can't tell me how you're going to improve my profit, why should I give you the money?
Okay.
And if you can answer that, just think what a powerful message is. That managing director, you go and sit in front of a managing director saying, we're going to give you all these dancing ladies across the screen, we're going to do that. And the last clients we did this for, their profit went up by this, their profit went up by that, their profit went up by that. You're saying that, you're communicating that, and the others aren't. Who's you going to buy off?
Yeah.
And is he going to pay you more for it? You bet your life he is.
Let's hope so, Sean. That's the idea. Yeah. Let's hope so. Fantastic. Has anybody got any more questions for Sean? If not, I think we've slightly run over. Apologies, but I think it was just a great session, and I think there was quite a bit of interactive feedback. So fantastic. Sean, I just want to thank you for today. Really, really appreciate it.
And an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Sean. We are recording it, so if you want to look back on it or you want to rewatch it, that's absolutely fine. And we do have a lot of other webinars on our webinar library as well, so please feel free to have a look at those because there might be something that might be useful for you. And I just want to thank Sean again. Thank you so much for coming in today and doing the webinar today. And hopefully, like I said, Sean's given his email address, so if you do want to have a chat with Sean after this, I'm sure we'll be pleased to speak to you. So thank you everybody much for coming, and hopefully we'll see you all soon. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.